Good evening and welcome to Sun Middle Temple. We are so happy you've joined us. My name is Alba and I use she, her pronouns. This is our second March observance and I'm so happy you are here. As always, this service is recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. I'll remind you that I will be gone for most of June and will schedule or pre-post anything for the month of June. I'll also remind you that we are taking the month of April off, but we will be back in May with our regularly scheduled content. So we will open today with our opening words, which will appear on the slide behind you at home. Please read along or listen as I read the words aloud. We welcome you into the light of the gods and light this flame in celebration. May its brightness symbolize our connection to the gods and the natural world. May you join us in this community of faith, cherishing love and with open hearts. So our theme for this month is New Beginnings, and our readings today, we have quite a few, but some of them are shorter, are Celtic Folklore, Welsh version, An Apple Story by John Rhys, Kalevala, please excuse my butchered pronunciation, Googled helped not at all, translated by John Martin Crawford, Beowulf, translated by Leslie Hall, Gilgamesh by Morris Jastrow Jr. and Albert T. Clay, and the Egyptian Book of the Dead, Hordedef's Tale, translated by Epiphius Wilson. So we'll open today with An Apple Story. One day, the farmer, riding by the lake, took his horse into the water to drink, and whilst looking straight down over his horse's ears into the smooth surface, he became aware of a most lovely face just beneath the tide, looking up archly at him. Quite bewildered, he earnestly beckoned, and by degrees the head and shoulders which belonged to the face emerged from the water. Overcome with emotion and nearly maddened by the blaze of beauty so suddenly put before him, he leaped from his horse and rushed wildly into the lake to try to clasp the lovely vision to his heart. As this was a clear case of love at first sight, the poor young man was not, of course, answerable for his actions, but the vision had vanished beneath the waves, to instantly reappear, however, a yard or two off, with the most provoking of smiles, and holding out her beautiful white hands towards her admirer, but slipping off into deep water the moment he approached. For many days the young farmer frequented the lake, but without seeing the beautiful naiad, until one day he sat down by the margin hoping that she would appear, and yet dreading her appearance, for this latter to him simply meant loss of all peace. Yet he rushed on his fate, like the lovesick shepherd in the old Italian romance, who watched the sleeping beauty, yet dreaded her awakening. Io perderò la pace quando si svegliera. The young man had brought the remains of his frugal dinner with him, and was munching quietly, by way of dessert, an apple of rare and delicious quality from a tree which grew upon a neighboring estate. Suddenly the lady appeared in all her rare beauty, almost close to him, and begged him to throw her one of his apples. This was altogether too much, and he replied by holding out the tempting morsel, exhibiting its beautiful red and green sides, saying that if she really wanted it, she must fetch it herself. Upon this she came up quite close, and as she took the apple from his left hand, he dexterously seized tight hold of her with his right, and held her fast. She, however, nothing daunted, bawled lustily at the top of her voice for help, and made such an outrageous noise that at length a most respectable-looking old gentleman appeared suddenly out of the midst of the lake. He had a superb white beard, and was simply and classically attired, merely in a single wreath of beautiful water lilies wound round his loins, which was possibly his summer costume, the weather being hot. He politely requested to know what was the matter, and what the young farmer wanted with his daughter. The case was thereupon explained, but not without the usual amount of nervous trepidation which usually happens to lovesick swains when called into the awful presence of Papa to explain their intentions. After a long parley, the lady at length agreed to become the young man's wife on 2 conditions, which he was to solemnly promise to keep. These conditions were that he was never to strike her with steel or clay, conditions to which the young man very readily assented. As these were primitive days when people were happy and honest, there were no lawyers to encumber the holy estate with lengthy settlements and to fill their own pockets with heavy fees. Matters were soon therefore settled, and the lady married to the young farmer on the spot by the very respectable old lake deity, her papa. The story goes on to say that the union was followed by 2 sons and 2 daughters. The eldest son became a great physician, and all his descendants after him were celebrated for their proficiency in the noble healing art. The second son was a mighty craftsman in all works appertaining to the manufacture and use of iron and metals. Indeed, it had been hinted that his coracle of bull's hide having become old and unsafe, he conceived the brilliant idea of making one of thin iron. This he actually accomplished, and to the intense amazement of the wondering populace, he constantly used it for fishing or other purposes on the lake, where he paddled about in perfect security. This important fact ought to be more generally known, as it gives him a fair claim to the introduction of iron shipbuilding, passe the shades of Buford and Brunel. Of the 2 daughters, one is said to have invented the small 10-string harp, the other the spinning wheel. Thus were introduced the arts of medicine manufacture, music, and woolen work. So our next story is from the Kalevala, translated by John Martin Crawford. And please excuse any of my pronunciations. While I did research them, I cannot vouch for my research as it was not super helpful. So I will do my best, but I will not get everything perfect. So, thus created were the islands. Rocks were fastened in the ocean, pillars of the sky were planted, fields and forests were created, checkered stones of many colors, gleaming in the silver sunlight. All the rocks stood well established. But the singer Wainamoinen had not yet beheld the sunshine, had not yet seen the golden moonlight, still remaining undelivered. Wainamoinen, old and trusty, lingering within his dungeon 30 summers altogether, and of winters also 30, peaceful on the waste of waters, on the broad sea's yielding bosom, well reflected, long considered, how unborn to live and flourish, in the spaces wrapped in darkness, in uncomfortable limits, where he had not seen the moonlight, had not seen the silver sunshine. Thereupon these words he uttered. Let himself be heard in this wise. Take, O moon, I pray thee, take me. Take me thou, O sun, above me. Take me thou, O bear of heaven, from this dark and dreary prison, from these unbefitting portals, from this narrow place of resting, from this dark and gloomy dwelling, hence to wander from the ocean, hence to walk upon the islands. On the dry land walk and wander, like an ancient hero wander, walk in open air and breathe it. Thus to see the moon at evening, thus to see the silver sunlight, thus to see the bear in heaven, that the stars I may consider. Since the moon refused to free him, and the sun would not deliver, nor the great bear give assistance, his existence growing weary, and his life but an annoyance, burst he then the outer portals of his dark and dismal fortress. With his strong but unnamed finger opens he the lock resisting, with the toes upon his left foot, with the fingers of his right hand, creeps he through the yielding portals to the threshold of his dwelling. On his knees across the threshold, throws himself head foremost forward, plunges into deeps of ocean, plunges hither, plunges thither, turning with his hands the water. Swims he northward, swims he southward, swims he eastward, swims he westward, studying his new surroundings. Thus our hero reached the water, rested 5 years in the ocean, 6 long years, and even 7 years, till the autumn of the 8th year, when at last he leaves the waters, stops upon a promontory, on a coast bereft of verdure. On his knees he leaves the ocean. On the land he plants his right foot, on the solid ground his left foot, quickly turns his hands about him, stands erect to see the sunshine, stands to see the golden moonlight, that he may behold the great bear, that he may the stars consider. Thus our hero, Wainamoinen, was thus the wonderful enchanter, was delivered from his mother, Ilmatar, the Ether's daughter. Our next reading is from Beowulf, And this one is really difficult to understand the language of, as well as my pronunciation not being perfect. So if you can't understand this one, there are plenty of translations online. But this is about them building a giant hall. In the burrows, then Beowulf, bairn of the Scaldings, beloved land prince for long-lasting season, was famed amid the folk. His father departed, the prince from his dwelling, till afterward sprang, great-minded Hilfenden, the Danes in his lifetime. He graciously governed, grim-mooded, aged, 4 bairns of his body born in succession, woke in the world, war troopers leader, Herogar, Hrothgar, and Helga the Good. Heard I that Elan was Ungetheno's consort, the well-beloved bedmate of the war-skyflame leader. Then glory in battle to Hrothgar was given. Waxing of war fame, that willing kinsman obeyed his bidding till the boys grew to manhood. A numerous band, it burned in his spirit, to urge his folk to found a great building, a mead hall grander than men of the era ever had heard of, and in it to share, with young and old, all of the blessings the Lord had allowed him, save life and retainers. Then the work I find afar was assigned to many races in Middle Earth's regions, to adorn the great folk hall. In due time it happened, early among men, that 'twas finished entirely, the greatest of hall buildings. Heroat he named it, who wide-reaching word-sway wield among earlmen. His promise he brake not, rings he lavished, treasure at a banquet. Towered the hall up, high and horn-crested, huge between antlers. It battle-waves bidded the blasting fire-demon. Ere long then from hottest hatred must sword-wrath arise for a woman's husband and father. And our next reading is Gilgamesh. I gaze upon thee, O Enkidu, like a god art thou. Why with the cattle dost thou roam across the field? Come, let me lead thee into Erech of the plazas, to the holy house, the dwelling of Anu. O Enkidu, arise, let me conduct thee to Inanna, the dwelling of Anu, the place in vitality, and thou like a wife wilt embrace him, thou wilt love him like thyself. Come, arise from the grounds that is cursed. He heard her word and accepted her speech. The counsel of the woman entered his heart. She stripped off a garment, clothed him with one. Another garment she kept on herself. She took hold of his hand. Like a god she brought him to the fertile meadow, the place of the sheepfold, the place that they received food. For he, Enkidu, whose birthplace was the mountain, with the gazelles, he was accustomed to eat herbs, with the cattle to drink water, with the water beings he was happy. Milk of the cattle he was accustomed to suck. Food they placed before him, he broke it off and looked and gazed. Enkidu had not known to eat food, to drink wine. He had not been taught. The woman opened her mouth and spoke to Enkidu. Eat food, O Enkidu, the provender of life. Drink wine, the custom of the land. Enkidu ate food till he was satiated. Wine he drank, 7 goblets. His spirit was loosened. He became hilarious. His heart became glad, and his face shone. The barber removed the hair on his body. He was anointed with oil. He became manlike. He put on a garment. He was like a man. And our final reading for the day is from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and it is Hordadef's tale. Hordadef then stood forth and spake. He said, Hitherto hast thou only heard tokens of those who have gone before, and of which no man knoweth their truth. But I will show thy majesty a man of thine own days. And his majesty said, Who is he, Hordadef? And the royal son Hordadef answered, It is a certain man named Dedi, who dwells at Desneferu. He is a man of 110 years old, and he eats 500 loaves of bread and a side of beef, and drinks 100 draughts of beer unto this day. He knows how to restore the head that is smitten off. He knows how to cause the lion to follow him, trailing his halter on the ground. He knows the designs of the dwelling of Tahuti, the majesty of the king of Upper and Lower Egypt. Khufu, the Blessed, has long sought for the designs of the dwelling of Tahuti, that he may make the like of them in his pyramid. And his majesty said, "Thou thyself, Hordadef, my son, bring him to me." And then there were the ships made ready for the king's son Hordadef, and he went up to the stream to Disneferu. And when the ships had moored at the haven, he landed, and sat him a leader of ebony, the poles of which were of cedar wood overlaid with gold. Now when he drew near to Dedi, they set down the litter, and he arose to greet Dedi, and found him lying on a palm-thick couch at the door of his house. One servant held his head and rubbed him, and another rubbed his feet. And the king's son Hordadef said, "Thy state is that of one who lives to good old age. For old age is the end of our voyage, the time of embalming, the time of burial. Lie then in the sun, free of infirmities, without the babble of dotage. This is the salutation to worthy age. I come from far to call thee, with a message from my father, Khufu, the Blessed, for thou shalt eat of the best which the king gives, and of the food which those have whom followed after him, that he may bring thee in good estate to thy fathers who are in the tomb." All of these stories involve a variety of new beginnings, and most of them people have the courage to change their life. Some have the courage to face death, to join society, to leave where they are known, or to create community. But all are practicing courage and choosing to step outside of their comfort zone into an unfamiliar place. New beginnings require courage to step into what is new and different, as this is often scary. But the ability to accept that you are scared and realize that that is okay, and to do something despite being scared, is the definition of courage and an integral part of new beginnings. Life is full of new beginnings that will require you to practice courage and use these invaluable skills. So next we will move into the ritual portion of our observance, and I will play the video. We leave this offering for our gods to symbolize our connection and devotion. We gift this rock to symbolize the stability of the gods in our world. We gift this water to accept the flow of our lives. We welcome life and bless our offerings with oil to share our riches. We embrace our connection to each other and the world and celebrate our revival. We will now move into our closing words, which will appear on the slide behind you as well, and you are free to just listen as I read these aloud, or read them aloud alongside me. As we move out into the world, let us remember our community of faith. Cherish love and open your heart as you walk through life. Hold dear the light of the gods and our connection with the natural world. Go forth in celebration and carry the light of connection within your heart. We will now move into coffee hour, and I will turn off the recording.